As a matter of fact, this might have been one of the last times Caitlin Clark herself took the court against the Atlanta Dream. On paper, it was a regular WNBA matchup. But what happened off the court? Well, that's where the story really begins. In the second half of that game, Caitlin came out like a storm. Every move precise, every shot calculated, but there was a fire in her eyes that went beyond competition. It was frustration, determination, and a silent message that she wasn't going to be confined. And while fans saw the on-court brilliance, very few know what happened after the final buzzer. A confrontation in the tunnel with head coach Stephanie White. A video exists. I've seen it. It hasn't been released publicly, and for good reason. It's intense. So intense that it could have changed careers. Caitlin Clark, the face of women's basketball, is losing her composure in a moment few have ever witnessed. Elite athletes don't snap out of nowhere. Breaking points build over months, and this was a perfect storm. A collision of talent, frustration, and a system that wasn't designed to handle her brilliance. Most fans watched the sideline clip and moved on. They saw a frustrated player, maybe shrugged and said, "She's passionate." But what they missed was the body language, the subtle signs of a breaking point. That gesture, that exasperation, wasn't fleeting annoyance. It was a season's worth of suppressed tension finally surfacing. Caitlin Clark came into the WNBA carrying Iowa magic, logo threes, unpredictable creativity, the ability to change a game in a single possession. Millions watched and marveled at her talent. But Stephanie White's motion offense, despite its pedigree, systematically stripped her of the tools that made her special. For months, Caitlin adjusted, adapted, and suppressed instinct. And when the system began to fail, injuries piling up, execution faltering, the frustration became unavoidable. The motion offense looks beautiful on paper. Constant movement, screening, reading, reacting. But here's the problem. It's the opposite of how generational offensive talents operate. You don't ask Steph Curry to run a motion offense for 30 possessions straight. You don't ask Luka Doncic to suppress his instincts and become a system player. You build around their gravity, their creativity, their ability to make something out of nothing. Stephanie White asked Caitlin Clark to do the opposite. And when injuries hit, when personnel mismatched, when execution faltered, frustration reached a boiling point. Let's look at the stats. Caitlin's three-point attempts dropped from 5.8 per game in Iowa to just 3.2 in Indiana. Her usage rate went from 32% to 26%. The highlight plays that defined her career became rare exceptions instead of regular occurrences. The system wasn't just failing, it actively worked against her. The tunnel video is perhaps the most significant piece of this puzzle. What happened there wasn't just a heated argument, it was a revelation. Caitlin's frustration, bottled up for months, finally erupted. I've seen the video, and while I won't release it, I can tell you this. It's explosive. Caitlin Clark, professional and composed in nearly every public setting, snaps at Stephanie White in a way that reveals the intensity of her frustration. Even without the video, the tension is visible in sideline clips throughout the season. That moment was the culmination, not the beginning. It shows a player at the limit, trapped in a system that demanded she suppress everything that made her extraordinary. Months before the season, analysts and insiders who studied Stephanie White's motion offense predicted disaster for Caitlin Clark. This wasn't opinion, it was pattern recognition, the result of years studying her coaching philosophy. They warned that the system would suffocate her creativity and limit her impact. The season proved them right. Highlight reel plays became exceptions. Frustration was visible in every timeout, every sideline moment, every post-game interview. Halfway through the season, Christy Sides was brought in, and suddenly the team's dynamic shifted. She understood Caitlin Clark's unique abilities and adjusted the approach. The results were immediate: better injury management, improved offensive flow, and moments of brilliance that reminded fans of her Iowa days. Caitlin finally had space to operate, and the team went on a run that surprised many. It raises a question. Had sides been coaching all season? Could the Fever have avoided frustrations, injuries, and missed opportunities? Could they have been championship contenders? Media narratives painted Stephanie White as the savior, the championship coach, who would unlock the Fever's potential. But reality tells a different story. Stats, footage, and insider reports all point to a mismatch between player and system. Even off-season interviews reflect this. Stephanie White avoided tough questions about offensive philosophy, player frustration, or injuries. Instead, she spoke about books, vacations, and personal hobbies. Humanizing, relatable, but also revealing. She was escaping from the season's uncomfortable truths, while Caitlin remained trapped in a system that limited her brilliance. 2026 isn't just another season. It's pivotal. It could determine Caitlin Clark's long-term future with the Fever. Generational talents don't stay in systems that suppress them. Loyalty exists, but only to a point. The choices for the Indiana Fever are crystal clear. Adaptation means giving Caitlin Clark the freedom she needs. More pick-and-rolls, isolation plays, and the type of Iowa-style creativity that made her a generational talent. When allowed to operate instinctively, Caitlin doesn't just score points. She changes the rhythm of the game, elevates her teammates, and forces defenses to react to her brilliance. This isn't about ego. It's about maximizing the unique gifts of a player who can define the franchise's future. Insistence, on the other hand, comes with heavy consequences. Forcing Caitlin to fit into a rigid system breeds frustration and tension, potentially creating conflict within the locker room and with management. Over time, it risks more than just performance. It risks the player herself. Elite talents do not thrive when constrained, and history shows they will find opportunities elsewhere if their abilities are continually suppressed. Doing nothing, however, is the riskiest path of all. Hoping that the same rigid system magically works, expecting injuries to disappear, or assuming frustration will vanish on its own is wishful thinking. Hope is not a strategy, and in professional sports, strategies determine championships. The solution is deceptively simple, yet profoundly powerful. Build around Caitlin Clark. Let her instincts dictate strategy. Let her talent drive the system, and let her creativity shape the offensive flow. This is how elite coaches maximize generational players. Phil Jackson never asked Michael Jordan to play like Scottie Pippen, and Greg Popovich never asked Tim Duncan to emulate Shaquille O'Neal. Systems are adapted to fit the player, not the other way around. By embracing this principle, the Fever can unlock the true potential of their franchise star and set themselves on a path to genuine championship contention. For the Fever, the truth is uncomfortable. The motion offense worked against their best player. Stephanie White may be brilliant, but brilliance alone doesn't win championships if the system doesn't fit the talent. Caitlin Clark isn't just a highlight reel. She's human. She experiences frustration, pressure, and limits. Imagine being the face of women's basketball, performing under scrutiny, and being forced into a system that stifles everything that made you extraordinary. Her frustration was visible, even without the tunnel video. Elite athletes have breaking points. Systems must adapt, not demand conformity. The Fever's management faces a critical choice. Are they building a system around Caitlin Clark, or asking her to fit into a system? The organization faces two distinct approaches: a player-centric model that puts talent at the center, or a system-centric model that prioritizes philosophy over results. Both approaches can work in theory, but the stakes are vastly different when dealing with a generational player like Caitlin Clark. If the Fever choose the system-centric route, they better be absolutely certain that the system is capable of winning championships. Stephanie White's motion offense has yet to prove itself in that regard. Not in Connecticut, and not in Indiana. The 2025 season wasn't a failure of talent. It was a failure of alignment. Caitlin Clark's frustration wasn't imagined. It was visible in her body language, in her reactions on the sideline, and in moments of clear disagreement with the offense. Breaking points emerged, not as isolated incidents, but as the cumulative effect of a system that didn't fit her style. The lessons from that season were obvious. Constrain a player like Caitlin, and performance declines. Free her, and the team's ceiling rises exponentially. Looking forward, 2026 isn't just another season. It's a defining moment for Caitlin Clark, for Stephanie White, and for the Indiana Fever as an organization. Generational talent doesn't wait, and it doesn't compromise indefinitely. It demands the space to shine, the freedom to create, and the support of a system built around its strengths. If the Fever fails to provide that environment, they risk losing not just a player, but the defining force of their franchise's future. In the first half against the Atlanta Dream, Caitlin Clark's usual explosive scoring was noticeably suppressed. Instead of the creative, instinctive play that had defined her Iowa career, she was forced into rigid, structured plays that left little room for improvisation. The frustration was visible. Every pass, every shot, every subtle hand gesture spoke volumes about her dissatisfaction with the system. Fans might have seen the numbers, but those watching closely could sense the tension building. This wasn't just a player struggling with execution. It was a player struggling against the system itself. The trend continued against the Connecticut Sun. Caitlin's three-point attempts dropped, her usage rate fell, and her sideline behavior betrayed constant disagreement with the offense she was being asked to run. Hand gestures, brief eye rolls, and moments of quiet frustration communicated a growing tension that could no longer be ignored. She was capable of so much more, but the structure around her left her restricted and visibly constrained. Then came the matchup against the Las Vegas Aces, a game that highlighted what was possible when Caitlin was allowed even a small window of freedom. In the third quarter, she broke away from the system, operated off instinct, and immediately lifted the team's performance. The difference was stark. The same player who had been frustrated and constrained suddenly became unstoppable. The team's efficiency spiked, scoring runs accelerated, and the crowd could feel the electricity of a player performing at her natural level. It was a glimpse of the untapped potential that had been there all along. Finally, during the semifinals run, the arrival of Christie Sides changed everything. The system began to adapt to Caitlin, rather than forcing her to fit into a predetermined mold. Injuries were managed more effectively, offensive flow improved, and the team rediscovered the creativity and spark that had been missing for months. Caitlin's natural instincts were once again the driving force, and the results spoke for themselves. The pattern is undeniable. When the system suppressed her, frustration mounted, performance dipped, and potential was lost. When the system adapted to her strengths, Caitlin thrived, the team flourished, and the game itself became an exhibition of what elite talent can accomplish when allowed to shine. The contrast leaves no room for doubt. System alignment isn't just important, it's the difference between mediocrity and greatness. Insiders confirm the tunnel confrontation wasn't the first instance of tension. Months of subtle disagreements, body language, and sideline frustration built up. The tunnel video captured the culmination of a season-long dynamic, one that most fans never saw, but which affected every game. During her time at Iowa in the 2022-23 season, Caitlin Clark was nothing short of spectacular. She posted a 32% usage rate, attempted 5.8 three-pointers per game, and maintained an impressive 1.4 assists to turnover ratio. These numbers weren't just statistics. They reflected a player operating at the peak of her instincts, creativity, and confidence. Every possession showcased her ability to read the defense, exploit mismatches, and create opportunities not only for herself, but for her teammates. She was the engine driving Iowa's offense, a player whose brilliance could not be contained. Fast forward to her 2025 season with the Indiana Fever, and the contrast is stark. Her usage rate dropped to 26%, three-point attempts fell to 3.2 per game, and her assists-to-turnover ratio declined to 0.9. On paper, it might look like a minor dip, but in context, It reveals something far more significant, a system that limited her freedom and stifled her natural talent. Caitlin wasn't performing below her level of skill. She was being constrained by a structure that didn't align with her strengths. When given the freedom to operate within a system that complements her instincts, Caitlin Clark's stats spike, her impact is undeniable, and her team thrives. When forced into a rigid system, performance drops, not due to a lack of talent, but because the system itself suppresses what makes her extraordinary. This isn't just about numbers. It's about understanding how elite players flourish when allowed to be themselves. The choice is clear: adapt the system or risk losing the franchise player. Generational talents like Caitlin Clark don't stay in environments that suppress them. Her skill set isn't just impressive, it's transformative. When she's allowed to operate freely, to read the defense, create her own shots, and make instinctive decisions, she elevates not just herself, but the entire team. Every possession becomes an opportunity for brilliance, and the team's overall performance rises alongside her. Ignoring that reality is a mistake that no franchise can afford to make. Adapting the system means more than minor tweaks. It requires trust in her judgment, freedom to operate without constraint, and a willingness to build the offense around her natural strengths, rather than forcing her into a predetermined mold. By doing so, the Fever can unlock championship potential that was previously stifled. On the other hand, insisting on maintaining rigid system structures comes with clear risks. Frustration grows, injuries accumulate under physical and mental stress, and team chemistry can fracture. Player morale declines, and even talented rosters struggle to perform under rigid, ill-fitting schemes. Doing nothing is not an option. The stakes are too high, and the consequences of inaction could define the franchise's future for years to come.